...2015 is turning out to be an extraordinarily good year for new motorbikes. OK, things like the 1299 Panigale, the new R1 and of course Kawasaki's H2, they're the ones that are stealing the headlines. But 2015 is also turning out to be a great year for sport tourers. Just think about what we've tested on the show. A few weeks ago we had, well, the granddaddy of the class, Honda's VFR 800. That's had a bit of an update, as Honda wanted to celebrate 300 million motorcycles that they've made. There's also Kawasaki's ZX-1000. Now that's a cracking bike as well, a bit more expensive than the VFR, but worth it, I have to say. And barely a week or two ago, you may remember that I tested Yamaha's new Tracer. That's the MT-09 Tracer, which is basically a sports touring edition of the MT-09 Naked. That is a great bike with an 847cc triple-cylinder engine. Well, not a moment too soon, Suzuki has arrived on the scene. This is the GSX-1000F. There will be a naked version of this, but leading the way is the F, and as you can see, it's a sport tourer. We've got a high set of handlebars, we've got a really comfortable riding position, and a decent amount of wind protection. But what's most interesting is at the heart of this is a GSX-R1000 motor and chassis. It's even got the same swing arm, but we're talking 2005 vintage GSX-R1000, or as you guys like to call it, the K5. And believe me, that was possibly one of the best sport bikes that Suzuki has ever built. And why have they taken an older motor? Well, this has got a longer stroke motor compared to the short stroke ones that are in the modern versions of the superbikes. They rev higher, they make ultimately a little bit more horsepower at the top, but you're still looking at 144 horsepower out of this and a massive amount of grunt. The ingredients are there, the recipe is simple. I think we'll take a ride and see if Suzuki has managed to pull it off. Fortunately, we're in Mpumalanga with Longtom Pass and the notorious 22, providing the ultimate test for any bike that claims to have a sporting side to its personality. I've opted for the full cow suit because even riding with plenty in reserve, the speeds soon start to climb. And before everybody complains and says I'm not putting my knee down so I shouldn't stick my leg out, well, I just can't ride quickly if I don't shift my body weight around, just like I would do at the track. It only takes a minute or two of riding to realise that this GSX-S is right at home in this environment. The sport side of this sport tourer's character is very strong indeed. The bike takes absolutely no effort to get turned. It flicks from side to side like a superbike, perhaps even more quickly than a superbike thanks to the high handlebar that is good for comfort and even better for getting some leverage over the front end. And then there's the engine. It's got mid-range to spare, so it's really quite difficult to keep the front end down. Honestly, officer, it's the bike, not me. Although beautifully surfaced, these roads feel quite bumpy at speed, so the softest suspension feels right at home, mixing a proper amount of feedback with a decent, supple ride quality. The brakes, unusually from Suzuki, are from Brembo, and unsurprisingly, they're well up to the job. There's traction control too. In fact, it's the most advanced system yet fitted to a Suzuki, with 3 different levels, and thankfully for those who like to clutch up their wheelies, it can be turned off completely. And joy of joys, it actually stays that way when you turn the ignition off. The least intrusive of its settings allows for some slip during full sport riding. There's a middle option for normal road use, and a real kind of party pooper option that will look after you in cold or wet weather conditions. After a day's riding, I can honestly say I'd rather have this bike than a full GSX-R1000 to enjoy these roads. It's just as quick in this environment, maybe even more so, and a damn sight more comfortable for the ride home. I don't know about you, but I think they've nailed the looks too. There's a fully naked version coming, which should be about 10,000 rand cheaper, and though that also looks good, the fairing on this F model manages to look sporty without putting off those customers who also want a practical daily bike. Although it uses the swing arm from the GSX-R1000 and the frame looks familiar, it's actually been built specifically for this model. And what a great job they've done. Agile, but not nervous. Comfortable, but not soggy. Compromise often has negative connotations, but not in this case. It really does straddle the sport and touring roles as well as you could wish for. Braking is helped by ABS that can't be switched off, but it's a system that doesn't intrude on a decent blast down your favourite back road. Instrumentation is all digital and relatively legible, though being a bit of a crusty old fart, I'd still prefer an analogue rev counter. But otherwise, the GSX-S is as impressive at the detail level as it is when you're actually riding it. I can't help but think, though, when you do look at the details, the question arises, why didn't they make this bike years ago? I mean, think about it. At the heart of it is a GSX-R1000 motor from 2005. And the rest of that technology, well, they've known how to do that for years as well. But no worries, it's here now. And as I said at the start of this piece, the sports touring class is about as competitive as it can possibly get at the moment. But Suzuki needn't worry. This will go, if not right to the top of the class, very, very close indeed. But there's one final detail, as always. How much is it going to cost? Have a guess, which is, I think, what Suzuki are doing at the moment. When you see this test, you'll be able to go into your Suzuki dealer and buy one in the next couple of weeks or so. This is the very first one in the country. They haven't determined that price, but they're aiming for 145,000 rand. And I reckon at that sort of money, they're going to sell as many as they can possibly bring in, and deservedly so. It's a great bike.
Well, you obviously enjoyed that. But what does it score on the TomTom heart rating?
I think, Donovan, I'd have to give it a very good rating, about a 4.5, I reckon.
4.5. Where does it lose the half?
I knew you were going to ask that. I think I'm slightly disappointed that they lopped off 15, 16 horsepower from the original K5 motor. They made a big song and dance of it. That was a 160 horsepower motor. Why, what do we call it?
Retuning, detuning, which is a politically correct way of saying make it slower.
Yeah, so that annoyed me a little bit, but otherwise pretty damn close to perfect. In terms of its competition, the Kawasaki Z1000SX, get that right, that's a very similar motorbike, and also, I mean, you've ridden that, haven't you? You raved about the handling on that.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very, very similar. That would also be a 4.5 rating for me. And of course, we've also got Yamaha's Tracer.
Yes, but that's significantly cheaper, 125,000 rand. Why wouldn't you just buy that?
Because, and you'll appreciate this, it makes about 40 horsepower, 35, 40 horsepower less.
Okay, so don't buy that.
Donovan has a very easy way of judging all these things. What makes the most horsepower? I want that one.
Pretty much.
And on that in-depth technical note, I think we should move on. We'll be back after the break when this young man will be speaking to an older man with the same surname about the recently held Paradise Rally.